At first blush, there appears to be nothing in our traditional way of seeing the world that allows for our inner beliefs to do much of anything at all, let alone change the universe itself. That is, however, until we begin to examine what the new discoveries are showing us about our world. Although the results of reality-bending research have been published in leading-edge technical journals, they're often shared in the language of scientification that masks the power of their meaning to a non-scientific person. And that's where our revolution comes in. Suddenly, we don't need the language of science to tell us that we're a powerful part of our world. Our everyday lives show us. I suspect that future generations will see our time in history as the turning point, when the conditions of the world forced us to discover how the universe really works and accept our interactive role in it. Rather than following the first 3 centuries of scientific imagery that portrayed us as powerless victims in life, the new science suggests just the opposite. The universe, our world, and our bodies are made of a shared field of energy that was scientifically recognized in the 20th century and is now identified by names that include the field, the quantum hologram, the mind of God, nature's mind, the matrix, and the divine matrix. Fact number 2. In the field of the divine matrix, things that have been connected physically and then separated act as if they are still connected through a phenomenon known as quantum entanglement. Fact number 3. Human DNA directly influences what happens in the divine matrix in a way that appears to defy the laws of time and space. Fact number 4. Human feeling, emotions, and belief directly changes the DNA that influences what happens in that matrix. And fact number 5, when we change our beliefs about our bodies and our world, the divine matrix translates that change into the reality of our lives. Well, with these and similar discoveries in mind, now we must ask ourselves the question that is perhaps the most revealing of all. Are we born with a natural ability to create and modify our bodies and our world? And if so, then we must be willing to ask the next question: what responsibility do we have to use our birth-given power in the presence of what experts tell us are the greatest threats to the future of our lives, our world, and even our species in history?
We also are broadcasting. And the question is, what are we saying? And who are we saying it to? Well, there's another branch of science in the year 2012 that validated, we all talk about being connected by a field. Mm-hmm. And in our genre, in our community, that's common knowledge. We just say, oh yeah, there's a field that connects all things. Not so for science until the year 2012.
Wow.
At the CERN superconducting supercollider in Geneva. They found that there is a field that underlies all of existence. And this is where it gets really, really interesting when we talk about consciousness, because even today, let me just say this. I went to a physics conference recently, and here's a physicist. He says, oh yeah, there's a field out there, and his hand's doing this. It's like out there that connects all things. The field isn't out there. We are literally the field. Every cell, the average human has about 50 trillion cells in the human body. Every one of those 50 trillion cells has about 100 trillion atoms. And here's the mind blower. Those atoms right now, with everyone, you and me, those atoms are constantly emerging from that field and collapsing back into the field in a dance.
Wow.
They emerge from that field to fill in the space of the template that I call the Gregg show or the James show or the Kelly show. Our consciousness is holding this energetic template in place. And so the beauty,
wow,
James, is if something is happening in our bodies that we're not happy about, it is malleable, and it can change in a heartbeat when we change the consciousness that holds that template in place. Those atoms will emerge and fill that new template. This is how we create miracles. This is how we create miraculous healings, or what some people call spontaneous healings. And it has a lot to do with human potential, because we have been conditioned to believe that we are frail, flawed, powerless victims in a world we have no control over, and that we need something outside of us to become the best version of ourselves. And now with our own science, the best science is telling us is that we literally are a soft technology. We can use those things externally, but we don't need them.
How would you describe the soul?
There's a part of us, and I just said this, a part of us that is timeless. It is ancient, all-knowing. It's the source of our love and our forgiveness. I'm going to use a word that means different things to different people, and then I'll define that word. And I think if people may be surprised at what this word actually means. All of those things we're talking about, consciousness and the ability to access these extraordinary potentials, they are part of what is called human divinity. Now, divinity for many people is associated with religion. And I can see why. I mean, there's schools of divinity, that have been, but the definition, if you look up the definition of divinity, this is really interesting. Divinity is the ability to transcend perceived limitations. And that's it.
So interestingly, the characteristics of time and the way it flows, they all support this idea. Time, think about this, time has a beginning, time has an end. Time unfolds as events that follow repeating patterns. These are all the kinds of things you would expect to see happening in a program. The patterns of time repeat on different scales, just as they would in a program. They reoccur as cycles, just as they would in the program. We can move forward and we can move backward in the time program by shifting our focus. Meditative techniques help us to do precisely that. So I'm going to share this new model, a new way of thinking about time that may help to give you a visual image of how it's possible, why it's possible for you to see the future before it actually happens. And I believe that will illustrate this idea of time as a program. So a recent series of experiments from 7 independent laboratories indicate that the human body apparently can detect time and events that have happened before they occur, randomly delivered stimulus from the future. Now, the phenomena, we would call this presentient, as in feeling in the future. In the paper that was released, they've got a new term for this. It is called PAA, and PAA stands for predictive anticipatory activity. So let me share with you how it works. I'm going to invite you to visualize in your mind, or maybe you can see this on the screen. If you can think of time as a flow, just like the flow of a river. So think of time like the flow of a river. And the river is moving in one direction. So in this case, I'm going to say it's moving from the left to the right. All right, because we know that time follows what we call the arrow of time. All right, as that river is flowing, if we were to put a post in the center of the river, that post would represent a significant emotional event that will happen in our lives in the future. It could be a marriage, it could be a divorce, it could be a loss of a loved one, it could be an ecstatic, joyous experience. The key here is that it is emotionally significant for us. So if you think of the post in the river representing an emotionally significant experience, now you know that if the river is flowing and when the flow hits that post, it will create ripples around the post. And here's where this gets really interesting. Some of those ripples actually will occur upstream before the post is reached by the water. Okay, so you have the post, the water is flowing, creating the ripples, but the ripples don't stop at the post. Some of those ripples actually precede the posts. Scientists believe this is the way the program of time works. Emotionally significant events in our lives are like the posts in that river. They create ripples that
move backward in space-time and precede the event before it ever even happens, sometimes by moments, sometimes by days, sometimes by weeks.
The wisdom that's in the books is older than the paper that they're written on. The wisdom originated before paper was ever even invented. And we find this wisdom on the cuneiform texts of our past, on the Sanskrit and the Tibetan stone texts. And it's this wisdom that is at the core of the major religions of the world, the Hebraic traditions, the Tibetan Buddhist traditions, the traditional Buddhist traditions. We find it at the basis of the Hindu traditions, at the basis of the pre-Christian and the Christian traditions, the Old and the New Testament. And it's in places like this that are isolated and remote that I've had the opportunity to be with the people that live the traditions that are in the libraries, with the monks, the nuns, the abbots of these places, and in other parts of the world with the shaman in Bolivia and southern Peru and in the Yucatan. And I've had the opportunity to be with the women in southern Peru, for example, in the Andes Mountains, who are anchoring this powerful feminine wisdom that is resurging in the world right now. And the point of all this, the point of me sharing all this with you, is that for 5,000 years, our indigenous ancestors, they've asked themselves the question, who am I? And they answered the question for themselves in a way that made sense to them. It wasn't science, but it made sense to the time and to the people in their world. It explained what they saw in the heavens. It explained what happened within their bodies and between people. And what's really fascinating to me right now is that in many instances, the new discoveries of modern science actually parallel the wisdom of our most ancient and cherished spiritual traditions. So for 5,000 years, our ancestors have done just that. They have asked, who am I? And they answered it for themselves. We live in the modern world of science. And science is a relatively young way of thinking about the world. You know, science is only about 300 years old. We say that science began in the 1700s when Isaac Newton formulated the laws of physics and he formalized them in his textbooks. So for 300 years, science has been trying to answer the same questions that our indigenous ancestors have tried to answer. For 300 years, science has asked the question, who are we?
And on this one particular trip, I came home and I began that routine, and I didn't get very far with it. Because I went to the ATM 5 o'clock on a Sunday afternoon in Albuquerque Airport, and the ATM machine told me there was nothing in that account. And I knew that it was a mistake. I knew that the account was full because I'd just been approved for a construction loan. It was a business construction loan on my property in northern New Mexico, and that there was plenty of money there, and I would check it Monday morning. So I drove home, and Monday morning, sure enough, I got up and I called the bank, and they said, well, there's no mistake, Mr. Braden. Not only is there no money in this account, you are overdrawn by 71 checks, and there's a $30 service charge in each of those checks. When can you come in and talk to us? I said, well, I'll be right there. So I did. I went to the bank and I said, well, what's happening? They said, well, there was a wire withdrawal from your account. It was not authorized. It was not authorized by me, and they believed that it was. And every penny in that account had been taken, and all the checks had already been written outstanding were now coming back against that account. And when something like that happens, there's really no way to rationalize anything else. You can't do anything else. So I didn't even have enough money to put gas in my car and get my animals out of the vet. There was absolutely nothing that was there, and I had to go home and look at this. I said, wow, something big is happening here. Well, at the same time, I had just completed a tour, a series of workshops along the Pacific Northwest for about 30 days. And the people who had offered to set these programs up for me had many reasons why the money from those programs wouldn't come through. They said, well, our accounting isn't done, or we haven't reconciled our accounts, or whatever. Something was happening. And at the same time, the gentleman who was living on my property in exchange for the carpentry, and this is really very delicate for me, and I have to be really careful. I guess the best way to identify this
is that he'd chosen a lifestyle that not only was what our property was not about, it was illegal in the eyes of the state of New Mexico at that time. And I was asking him to change his lifestyle. Was that delicate? That was good. So all these things were happening at the same time. And I said, if the mirrors hold true, obviously there's some mirrors that are happening to me. What are these mirrors saying to me? Well, I went for a walk. I couldn't do much else. I had to go for a walk that day. There's a beautiful road that goes about 4 miles from our home down to the Rio Grande Gorge, a beautiful wildlife sanctuary. I went for a walk down the road that day. There's a huge mountain. It's called Ute Peak. There are a lot of stories from the Ute Indians about what this mountain, it's a very sacred mountain. It marks the end of their hunting grounds. And I often walk along this road in front of this mountain. I've written whole books, done entire workshops on this road, and I have to go home and put them in the computer. And I asked myself this question. I said, if these mirrors hold true, then there's a mirror that's happening here. What are these people showing to me? And I knew that I had to find a common thread. So I began looking at what each of these relationships was demonstrating. And I went through all kinds of possibilities. And when it was all said and done, what I knew that in each relationship, I knew that there were issues of honesty, integrity, and trust were the three that were really the most outstanding for me. And so I said to myself, if this mirror holds true, if people that are around me are demonstrating these patterns of behavior, are they showing me that I somehow am lacking in honesty, as Jeff may have thought, or integrity, or trust? Is that what they're showing me? And this feeling welled up inside of me before I even got that sentence out of my head and said, no, that's what this work is all about. That's precisely what this work is all about. And at the same time, there was a realization. It was such a powerful, it was subtle and powerful, that came to me. And I realized that they were not showing me a mirror of what I was in the moment, as we'd always been conditioned, as I'd been conditioned to believe. Rather, they were showing me a more subtle mirror, the mirror of what I judged in that moment. The mirror of what I judged in that moment. And that's precisely what was happening. I had a tremendous charge on honesty and integrity and trust. Such a charge that I was not willing to allow it in others. I was not willing to allow that in others. When you have a charge on something, what does that promise? It promises that you'll see it. You'll see it in your life if you've got a charge on it. I had that charge. These three people that came into my life, now I know that each of them was a powerful, skillful master that impeccably held the mirror to me during that time in my life of my greatest charges. And it was relatively concise the way they did that. It could have drawn out over years, and maybe it did. Maybe those mirrors have been shown to me year after year on such subtle levels that I never recognized them. And they became less subtle and less subtle and less subtle until something happened that I could not look away from. And in that moment, I had that mirror. In that moment, I was shown the second Essene mystery of relationship, the mirror of that which we judge in the moment. The gentleman that had invited me to work with him wanted to set up these seminars. The very first moment we met, something interesting happened. We met in the home of a mutual friend in Northern California. And the first moment we met, I'd never seen him before. I'd spoken with him on the phone. And our eyes met on the landing of this house. And I said something to him that I seldom, or rarely, will ask anyone upon first meeting him. And I simply said, "When's your birthday?" And he said, "Well, my birthday is June 28th, 1954. And I said, "Wow, that's my birthday. The exact month, the exact day, and the exact year." I'm a Cancerian. If you know much about Cancerians, you know that Cancerians live in a world of feeling. Maybe that's why we're exploring feelings this weekend. And I'm a double Cancerian, which means double feeling. And depending on how you run the charts, I've got 5 or 6 planets in the 12th house that are all in Cancer. So my world is a very feeling world. And my path has been to reconcile that feeling world with the academics and the hard sciences through the corporate and the academic world. And I looked at him and I said, well, you must have had the same experiences then. Another Cancerian male. What a great person to share this business with. And he said something to me in that moment. He looked me directly in the eyes and he said something to me and I discounted it. I used my logic. And what he said to me was, I'm your evil twin. And he told me in that moment and I discounted it. Because my logic said, oh, well, he's just making a joke. Although I had a feeling in here. Physicists are beginning to say, and as our ancient and indigenous predecessors told us, are we powerful creators actually creating this universe as we go? There are physicists today, particularly Dr. John Wheeler of Princeton University, who is literally saying that the universe exists because of consciousness. Maybe not yours and mine today, but because of consciousness in general. And that our consciousness today is continuing to add to and change and evolve the universe. And this is precisely what our most cherished traditions have said to us, that we're part of everything that we see. We have direct access to the most fundamental creative forces in this universe that gives us the power to heal our bodies, to heal the bodies of our loved ones, to bring peace to our world, abundance into our lives, because that is our ability to do precisely these things. It's all about quantum energy, the stuff that we're made of. We now know that quantum energy is directly affected by belief. Belief! What physicists now know is that quantum energy is directly affected by the power of belief. Belief is literally a code. You all are programmers. You're physicists. You have to be to live in this world. You also have to be a little nutty to live in this world. You think so? I was just having this conversation with a woman on the plane on the way out here, because an absolutely sane, rational person probably could not sustain the hurt of all the things that are happening in this world today. So we're all a little out there. We have to be just to get by, but we can have fun with it. Belief is a code. Belief is what translates the invisible potential. What physicists are saying is that the blueprint for everything you could ever imagine already exists. All of the peace, all of the healing, all of the abundance, all of the joy, as well as the darkness and the Holocaust and the war and the death and the suffering and destruction, they all exist as potential in this quantum field. And it's where we place our focus that locks one of those possibilities into place and brings it into this material world. You're going to see exactly how it happens. The code that translates the invisible energy into what we see as the visible matter. A growing number of scientists, mainstream scientists, are now saying that our universe and our reality works like a giant, massive consciousness computer. I was a senior computer systems designer at Martin Marietta Aerospace, and when I saw this, I said, cool. Tell me more. Most of us are familiar enough with computers now that we can use this as an analogy. So I chose to use it here today. A computer, any computer, no matter how small or how big, pretty much operates the same way. All computers have what are called hardware. It's your keyboards. It's your screen. It's where the output from your computer is seen on a printer or a plotter of some kind. We have what is called an operating system. Sometimes it's a Macintosh or a Windows or a Unix or a Sun operating system. And we have programs. The programs speak to the hardware through the operating system. The operating system is the intermediary that allows our programs, Word, Mac, Picture, whatever it is, to talk to the hardware. Let's compare our electronic computer to our consciousness computer. An electronic computer has hardware or the output. Our consciousness computer of the universe has hardware or output that we call the physical world. An electronic computer, as we just said, has an operating system. Consciousness has an operating system that is called consciousness. An electronic computer has programs that speak through the operating system to change the output. Our consciousness computer also has programs that speak through the consciousness to change our physical world. What do we call those programs? We call it feeling and belief. what we believe and how we feel about what we believe. How many people have heard it say we've got to change our consciousness? You hear that all the time. I had a phone call a few weeks ago. They said, Greg, you have to come to this little town outside of Chicago because the forces of darkness are taking over and doing all these programs. We need you to come do a program of light to change the consciousness. Okay, I understand it's well-intentioned. I know what it means. But look at what's happening here. If you want to change what's happening, for all intents and purposes, on your program, if you want to change what comes out of your computer, do you change your operating system? So for all intents and purposes, the operating system is fixed. It doesn't change. What changes is the programs that go into the operating system that are communicating. Well, if we're using this analogy and this metaphor, if we want to change our world, if we want to heal our bodies, bring peace to our world, abundance in our lives, nurturing, compassionate relationships, it's not about changing the consciousness, because our consciousness is essentially fixed. It's about changing what goes into the consciousness. If we want to change in the output on the computer, we're changing the programs. If we want to change our physical world, we've got to change our beliefs and our feelings. The way to do that was the subject of ancient traditions. Entire libraries, temple walls, and texts were left to us for over 8,000 years, telling us precisely how we do just this. And over time, bits and pieces of that have been lost in the language of spirituality. Edits were made, translations were made. Western physics, modern science, is only about 400 years old, however, and they are rediscovering in a language that they are comfortable with precisely the same principles. Reality is a code. It is literally a code. The title of this program is Rewriting the Reality Code, because that is precisely what you and I are doing, individually and collectively, a code that is based on belief. How many of you are familiar with the cold fusion experiments back in the 1980s? Remember hearing about cold fusion? It was a big deal all over the news. It was the answer to our energy problems of the 70s that we had. It put out more energy than it took to create that energy, and all of a sudden we didn't hear about it anymore. What happened? Where's cold fusion today? Well, here's what happened. What the scientists found was they could use the same equipment in the same laboratory, and sometimes that equipment would create cold fusion and sometimes it wouldn't. Sometimes the experiments were successful, sometimes they were not, and they couldn't figure out why. And it took a particularly astute young physicist at the University of Colorado in Boulder about 1 o'clock in the afternoon over a chicken salad sandwich, I would imagine. And he said, you guys, I don't know if this is important or not, but I've noticed a pattern. He said, why is it more often than not, when the scientists in the room believe in cold fusion, the experiments are successful? And when they are skeptical, the experiments fail. And this led to a whole series of studies that are still going on today. The bottom line, they discovered that the expectation of the people in the room was influencing the outcome of the experiment. Well, you can't have a global energy system based on something that people believe in. I've thought about this. I wouldn't want to be flying in a plane with a pilot who was questioning whether or not the cold fusion flying his plane was making it work or not. This is how we're going about finding out this power of belief in our lives. There are sects of Buddhism that literally say the reality of our world exists only where our mind creates a focus.
How do we actually interact? How do we change that blueprint of our body or of the world beyond our body? A scientific paper published in the year 2004 gives us the clue for precisely this. It was published in the Journal of Alternative and Complementary Medicine, Volume 10, Number 1, in the year 2004. So you can go and check this out for yourself. But I'd like to read to you directly a quote that is in the conclusion of the experiments and the studies, because what I'm going to say to you opens the door to all the possibilities that we're talking about, and it opens the door from a scientific perspective in a peer-reviewed journal rather than metaphor or hypothesis or conjecture. So this is why I think this is so important. So the paper states, and this is a quote, there is compelling evidence to suggest that the physical heart is coupled to a field of information that is not bound by the classical limits of time and space. End of quote. Wow. So what that is saying is that within our hearts, as we've discovered throughout this series, Missing Links, we have cells, we have sensory neurites, brain-like cells that function in a way that give us an opportunity to transcend the laws of physics as we know them today. Our intuition, our emotion, our love is not bound by the conventional laws of physics in this world. We transcend those laws when we understand this principle and when we understand how to work with the heart. And language is a key to this. This is why I shared the episode about language in this series before we get to the place where we are right now. This is where language comes in. The words that we choose are the codes that direct our neurons to reach into the field of all possibilities, into the quantum matrix, into the divine matrix, and once again to collapse those many potentials into the single discrete experience that we have chosen in our lives. So the question becomes, what language are you using? What language are you using to direct your relationship with the divine matrix? What words do you use in your conversations, in your interactions with people day in, day out? Do you use your words consciously or are they unconscious? Are you saying things subconsciously to the field that you would never intentionally say in a million years? And you know, when you hear things like this, there was a brilliant man that I studied with years ago, Robert Tennyson Stevens, who brought the ideas of conscious languaging forward in the 20th century in a way that had not been done since the time of Benjamin Lee Whorf. And I remember some of the examples that Robert Stevens gave to us and things that we say every day. What if everything that you speak with your words is actually a command to the field? What if every word is a command? Even the things that we say, oh, we're just kidding or we're just joking. How many times do we say, oh, that really cracks me up when you're laughing about something? Do you really want to be saying that to the field? How many times do people say, oh, this is to die for? I would die for this. Is that really what you want to be saying to the field? I could give you examples, and I do in the books and in a lot of our live interactions in our workshops, of people who have experienced precisely what it is that they're saying into the field. It's very common in the entertainment industry, before someone goes on stage, for the people behind you to say, break a leg. I cannot tell you how many times that has happened to people, and as they're walking onto the stage, or in one case, actually already on the stage, and the speaker literally walked off of the back of the stage, what he thought was solid ground. And I can't scientifically connect that experience of him literally walking off the stage and breaking a leg to what happened behind the stage, but the parallels are so close.
Although the results of reality-bending research have been published in leading-edge technical journals, they're often shared in the language of scientification that masks the power of their meaning to a non-scientific person. And that's where our revolution comes in. Suddenly, we don't need the language of science to tell us that we're a powerful part of our world. Our everyday lives show us. I suspect that future generations will see our time in history as the turning point, when the conditions of the world forced us to discover how the universe really works and accept our interactive role in it. Rather than following the first 3 centuries of scientific imagery that portrayed us as powerless victims in life, the new science suggests just the opposite. The universe, our world, and our bodies are made of a shared field of energy that was scientifically recognized in the 20th century and is now identified by names that include the field, the quantum hologram, the mind of God, nature's mind, the matrix, and the divine matrix.
One of the first scientific links to what I'm talking about here, the link between the language that we use and our biology, the way that our neurons fire, was made early in the 20th century by a linguist. His name was Benjamin Lee Whorf. And the ideas that Benjamin Whorf shared in the world of linguistics, in the world of science, they were radical for his time. And what he said is this. Number one, he said that the way that we speak actually influences the way that we think. But perhaps even more importantly, number two,
he said the way that we speak influences what we think, that our thoughts, what we are capable of thinking, are actually linked to the way our neurons are being wired. One of the reasons that Worf came to this conclusion was because of the work that he was doing with an indigenous people in North America, northern Arizona, the Hopi. And what he found was that the language of the Hopi, when that language was translated into English, what he found is that the Hopi have a very, very different way of thinking about us, about nature, about our relationship to the world, and specifically about time. So here we are back at time. Time is the program that allows us to live our lives as we do within the operating system of the divine matrix. What Worf found was that in the Hopi language, they see everything as alive, everything is connected, everything is present and now. From the Hopi perspective, there are only two realms of possibility. One is the realm of things that are manifesting in the present, and one is the realm of things that are already manifest. The Hopi do not think about time the way that we think about time. From their perspective, the manifest is everything that has already happened. It's everything that we can sense, everything that we can experience. It's what's already occurred in the world. From this perspective, the manifesting is what is unfolding in this moment and is actually called in the language the spirit of the breath. It includes whatever is unfolding in the moment now as well as what's possible in the future. Now, these may seem like insignificant changes that I'm talking about between the way that the Hopi think and the way we think, but they have very powerful implications. Let me talk to you about the concept of time in the Hopi language. In Hopi, there is no time as we know it. There's only now. And what Worf found when he was exploring the language is that there were no nouns in the Hopi language to specifically refer to the past or the future. Everything is present. Everything is happening right now.
22 years ago, I would have agreed with you. At first blush, there appears to be nothing in our traditional way of seeing the world that allows for our inner beliefs to do much of anything at all, let alone change the universe itself. That is, however, until we begin to examine what the new discoveries are showing us about our world. Although the results of reality-bending research have been published in leading-edge technical journals, they're often shared in the language of scientification that masks the power of their meaning to a non-scientific person. And that's where our revolution comes in. Suddenly, we don't need the language of science to tell us that we're a powerful part of our world. Our everyday lives show us. I suspect that future generations will see our time in history as the turning point, when the conditions of the world forced us to discover how the universe really works and accept our interactive role in it. Rather than following the first 3 centuries of scientific imagery that portrayed us as powerless victims in life, the new science suggests just the opposite. The universe, our world, and our bodies are made of a shared field of energy that was scientifically recognized in the 20th century and is now identified by names that include the field, the quantum hologram, the mind of God, nature's mind, the matrix, and the divine matrix. Fact number 2. In the field of the divine matrix, things that have been connected physically and then separated act as if they are still connected through a phenomenon known as quantum entanglement. Fact number 3. Human DNA directly influences what happens in the divine matrix in a way that appears to defy the laws of time and space. Fact number 4. Human feeling, emotions, and belief directly changes the DNA that influences what happens in that matrix. And fact number 5, when we change our beliefs about our bodies and our world, the divine matrix translates that change into the reality of our lives. Well, with these and similar discoveries in mind, now we must ask ourselves the question that is perhaps the most revealing of all.
Are we born with a natural ability to create and modify our bodies and our world? And if so, then we must be willing to ask the next question: what responsibility do we have to use our birth-given power in the presence of what experts tell us are the greatest threats to the future of our lives, our world, and even our species in history?
Our capacity to heal is something that we already have and that already lives within each of us. From yogis and monks and nuns to shamans, mystics, and curanderos, people whose respective traditions are very different from one another. There's a fundamental theme that weaves the threads of each tradition into a single, beautiful, powerful tapestry. These ancient and indigenous traditions teach that the quality of our lives and how long we live, at the root, come down to the way we think of ourselves and the world. To replace the limiting beliefs that we've learned from our families and friends and social institutions with new, self-empowering perspectives truly does, in Michael's words, change everything. I discovered this for myself in the most direct way possible when I met a Tibetan nun who defied the conventional wisdom I had learned as to what age means in the role of longevity in our lives. The nun's secret. After nearly 2 weeks of acclimating to elevations as high as 16,000 feet above sea level, and having our bodies bounced off the stiff spring seats of an ancient Chinese school bus, along roads that were little more than washed-out trails, we arrived at the remote monastery. It was hours away from the nearest village and occupied only by a group of about 100 Tibetan nuns who had little contact with the outside world and welcomed very few visitors. The dust billowed into the air above the surrounding hills, alerting the nuns in advance that we were on our way, and they were waiting for us when we arrived, standing quietly among a crowd of curious but very shy children, local farmers and yak herders, and weather-hardened nomads who had come to see who we were and where we came from. It seems that every photo opportunity in Tibet was what our group members called, quote, a National Geographic moment, end of quote, meaning that a picture capturing it would qualify as a cover image for the popular magazine, and this moment was no different.
Here's what we do. We're so good at this. We're so good at preserving our own safety. When we feel unsafe in life, when we feel it's not safe to love, we will hide our vulnerable parts to keep them safe. We'll hide them from one another. We'll hide them from other people. Often we hide them from ourselves. We will tell ourselves that we no longer know how to love. Two scientists, Michelson and Morley, the very famous Michelson-Morley experiment, to determine if this field even exists, and if it is, what is our relationship to the field. Let me give you just a little sense of the experiment. If I invited you to join me outdoors right now, wherever we are, and we moisten our finger, we put it above our head, and in the moment that we did that, if we felt no wind against our finger and concluded, because we feel no wind, there is no air, is that valid? Well, of course it's not. We know that the air exists whether there is a wind or not. Well, this is the equivalent of the Michelson-Morley experiment. They said if there's a field that connects all things, that field should be in motion. The earth is rotating and it would create a motion in the field. So we should be able to detect the field. They built equipment to detect the field and they detected no movement in 1897. And because they detected no movement, the conclusion published in mainstream scientific journals for 100 years said that there is no field and everything is separate from everything else. Albert Einstein had some very strong opinions, and his opinions surprise most people. So the question, are we passive observers in the universe? Are we sitting and watching things happen around us with no influence over what those are? Are we victims of the universe and our own circumstances? Or are we somehow actively participating? Maybe we don't know it, but are we somehow actively participating in the universe? Well, I want to share with you Albert Einstein, and again, a lot of people are surprised. I'm going to give you a direct quote from him. He said, quote, "We live in a world
which exists independently of us human beings. So he believed that we are separate from everything out there. He said, the world stands before us like this great eternal riddle, partially accessible to our inspection and thinking. So what he's saying is, we're separate, and we're lucky if we get to understand a little bit of it. Okay, so that was Albert Einstein's perspective, and it was a problem for him. On his deathbed, he was still trying to work the equations to unify all of the fields of physics into one eloquent equation that would describe our relationship to the universe, and he couldn't do it from this code, either silently or out loud, until you feel this shift in a strength within you as you accept the power of the love, your love, and the power of that love to transcend the suffering, whatever it is that comes into your life. The key is to embrace this with a focus and awareness in the heart, not in the mind. You know how to do that because we've done this in the other modules. So let's do this. This is my favorite part of each of these modules, is actually applying what it is that we're learning. You're learning principles, you're learning science, you're learning history, and now you're learning application and technique. For thousands and thousands of years, our ancestors passed down generation to generation, mother to daughter, father to son, tribe to tribe, civilization to civilization. The things that were really important, the things that they really wanted to be preserved as their legacy, they passed down. They didn't have computers, they didn't have memory sticks, obviously thousands of years ago, but they did have the stories. And the stories reflect the way that we think and how we think. Now, let me just give you an example so you know exactly what I'm talking about. I think intuitively, most of us are on board with the fact that there's a field of energy that underlies all of creation. There's a field that connects all things. The scientists said, okay, this Higgs boson would be created by the disturbance of the quantum field, and it will create a particle with a mass of 125 giga-electron volts. All right? Our brains typically are not set up to remember very specific kinds of data like that. But that data is what tells a scientist there's a field out there. On the other hand, in the Hopi tradition that we spoke about earlier in this course, for thousands of years, they've always known there was a field out there, but they didn't talk about 125 giga-electron volt Higgs bosons to prove the field. They told a story. In the Hopi tradition, in the beginning of this cycle of existence, Spider Grandmother, the ancestral feminine, she emerged from deep within the earth. And Spider Grandmother began to weave the web of creation upon which her children would live their lives and create their children to live their lives. So it's a very, very different feeling. It's not about specific numbers, but it conveys an idea. Spider Grandmother wove the web of creation. In recent years, scientists have discovered caves that have been kept hidden from the general public by the Australian people because these caves preserve the wisdom of their origins, where they come from, who they are, how they function in the world. And the dates on these caves go back over 28,000 years before present.
If they can live in the past as well as in the future and even change history through choices made in the present, then surely we can as well. The only difference between those isolated particles and us is that we're made of a lot of particles and we're held together by the power of consciousness itself. The ancient mystics reminded our hearts, and modern experiments have proven to our minds that the single most powerful force in the universe is something that already lives within each of us. And that's the great secret of creation itself. It's the power to create in the world what we imagine in our beliefs. And while it may sound too simple to be true, I believe that the universe works precisely this way, and the evidence supports that belief. When the Sufi poet Rumi stated that we're afraid of our own immortality,
we want to embrace that technology. How much of ourselves do we want to give away to the technology? We cannot answer that question until we know what we're giving away. To answer that, we have to know the new human story. And that's what this course is all about. So for me, it really comes down to love. Do we love ourselves enough to embrace the deep truth of who we are in this world, the deep truth of our story, of the new human story? Do we love ourselves enough to think in our hearts and our minds and to live in our lives the deep truth that that story is revealing? Well, we don't have to wait long to find the answer, because you and I are answering it in every choice that we make in every moment of each day of our lives. My hope is that what I've shared through this and my modules and what Bruce and Lynn are sharing in their modules helps you to become aware, number one, of this reality. Number two, gives you the information and the ways to discern, not judge, but to discern what technology and to what degree you want technology to play a role in your life. And it's different for everyone. For people that need the technology to become the best versions of themselves, that tech is there. And for people that are simply looking to that tech as recreation, it's a caution in terms of how much we invite that recreational technology into our lives. Do we want to put computer chips into our brain for fun and to make our games easier? And you now have all the information you need to be able to make choices like that.